Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Majan Al-Yaroubi. I work as the Deputy Director of Quality Assurance Unit at the College of Banking and Financial Studies, and today I'll be anchoring today's webinar. Okay. As part of Knowledge Transfer and Community Engagement Initiative at the College of Banking and Financial Studies, we have started Oman Knowledge Sharing Webinar Series. This is the 5th international webinar under this initiative. It gives us immense pleasure to welcome you all to meet the journal editors, a digital interaction webinar. We are happy to have 3 editors-in-chief of top-ranked international journals. We hope that today's webinar will help you the participants to understand the techniques and requirements of international journal publications. Our objective is to provide a forum for international researchers to enhance high quality and impactful research publications. May I request Dr. Zahran Asalti, Dean of the College of Banking and Financial Studies, Muscat, to deliver a welcome address and opening of the webinar.
Yes, thank you, Majan. Dear respected key speakers, Professor Hiram Ting, Professor Preeti Rawat, and Professor Justin Paul, delegates from Oman and across the world. Good afternoon, good morning, maybe to some of you, good evening for others. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all to our 2nd international webinar on Meet the Journal Editor, a digital interaction. I'm so happy to note that we have received highly encouraging responses from scholars from 22 different countries across the globe to participate in this international webinar. On behalf of the College of Banking and Financial Studies, I heartily extend a very welcome to all of you. The College of Banking and Financial Study, CBFS, is the leading higher education institution in the banking and finance domain in Oman that was established in 1983. The college is the first government higher education institution to be accredited by our local accreditation body, Oman Authority for Academic Accreditation and Quality Assurance of Education, OAAA QA. CBFS offers a broad range of programs at both bachelor and master programs in areas related to accounting, finance, auditing, banking, business administration. CBFS also provide professional training and certifications and conduct customized as well open training courses in banking, finance, and others. The college support applied research and encourage consultancy activities. We have started this Oman knowledge sharing webinar series as part of knowledge transfer and community engagement initiative under the research at CBFS. Over the years, we have been receiving overwhelming responses and support from scholars across the globe to participate in these events. This shows the quality of our effort in transferring knowledge to the community. Today's webinar will provide a forum for dialogue among researchers to come together to know the key issues and addresses the challenges in publication scientific journals. The aim of this webinar is to provide participants a forum directly with the journal editors to discuss about the key issues for successful publication. We are highly grateful to the 3 editors of top-ranked journals who have agreed to provide right guidance to our researchers. I certainly hope that the deliberation and open forum discussion of today's webinar will help the participant to know about how to write impactful research paper for publishing in ranked journals. We at CBFS conduct various research activities as part of our research initiatives. We will update you about these events in due course. We look forward to your active support and participation in all our research activities in the near future. On behalf of the college, I once again welcome you all to this webinar. I certainly hope that this webinar will be informative and fruitful to all of you. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zahran. As mentioned earlier, today we have 3 distinguished professors to share their thoughts on various themes of journal publications. The first session will be on selection of relevant topics and themes for research papers by Professor Hiram Ting. I would like to invite Ms. Aisha Al-Mandari to introduce Professor Hiram Ting.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. I would like to start by introducing our esteemed guest, Dr. Hiram Ting, he's an associate professor at UCSI University and chairman of Sarawak Research Society in Malaysia. He holds a number of international positions, including adjunct associate professor at Ming Chuang University in Taiwan, professional chair at Polytechnic University of the Philippines in the Philippines, visiting fellow at Wakayama University in Japan, and adjunct professor at Universitas Islam Bandung in Indonesia. Presently, he is editor-in-chief of Young Consumers Journal, which is published by Emerald Publishing and ranked B as per ADBC journal ranking list. He has also been appointed as editor and guest editors of more than 20 reputable journals and is currently the ambassador of Emerald Publishing in the East Asia region. He is also actively involved in consultancy and collaborative projects with the government agencies, business organizations, and local community, such as the initiative of Responsible Borneo Reborn in Sarawak. By this small introduction, I would like to welcome Dr. Hiram to start his session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to all from Malaysia. It's 6 p.m. in Malaysia, the time for dinner. But I'm glad to be here with you to share something which I'm still learning. Therefore, I would like to say at the outset, it is by no means that I'm here sharing as a publication expert. I'm not a publication expert. I still receive a lot of rejections, but it is a learning process, and I hope you will find my sharing useful in some ways, and we can encourage one another, and hopefully we would make progress along the way. I understand that I'm given 20 minutes, so I will try my best to share something within 20 minutes. It is, again, by no means a comprehensive presentation, but I hope if you have any questions, you feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to respond and share my experience. So I hope I can share my slides. Okay. Are you seeing my slide now?
Yes, Professor, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to College of Banking and Financial Studies, Muscat, in Oman for the invitation. I'll be talking about selection of relevant topics and themes for research papers. I will not, deliver a lecture. As I mentioned earlier, it is more about experience sharing, and a lot of these experiences are accumulated through failures and mistakes, rejections, and we learned a lot from comments given by reviewers. So let me just begin with the first slide. Basically, this is something that we are aware of. Whenever we look for a topic for a paper, first thing first, it must be something that interests you. Now, for a long time, even today, I still find myself being curious about many things. And that curiosity, that desire to know the truth, to know the realities out there, is fundamentally the drive, the motivation that drives me to do research and to find a good topic for a research paper. And to do it consistently, persistently. If it is not something that is interesting to you, the chance is you will not do it for a long time. Well, we may do it for promotion, we may do it for achieving certain objectives, but I strongly believe to succeed, to persist, whenever we write a paper, whenever we select a topic, a theme, it has to be something that interests us. Secondly, it has to be something that you are familiar with. Now, it doesn't mean you don't explore new things. What it means is you know your background, you know what you are good at, especially for those working adults. I have a good number of students who are working. They are doing their MBA, DBA. I told them, when you do your research, when you write a paper, let's do something that is related to your background, because it is something that you are familiar with. You know the context better than many of us, and you know what the issues are. And most likely, you even know where to get data. So yes, we can always explore something new, but don't forget what we are familiar with, because it gives us a good basis to be innovative, to extend knowledge, to look at the same problems from another perspective, to develop another framework, another alternative to address the same issue. So that, for me, requires more creativity, more innovation. It's not just about having the right solution. It's also about coming up with the right questions, more innovative questions in order to address the issues. So that would be the second point. Thirdly, when you know what you want to do, when you know what you are familiar with, it's important to read up relevant journal articles. We can utilize a lot of resources, Emerald Publishing, Taylor and Francis, Wiley. We can use Google Scholar to find relevant articles related to the topics, the themes that we want to study. And when we do that, most of the time, we will look for papers that use meta-analysis or systematic literature review, because those papers give you, a bird's-eye view or a comprehensive, holistic view of what this topic is about, what has been done, and what are the future agenda. Also, we often look at papers written by experts in that particular areas. We look at the introduction, and most of the times we look at their conclusion. Why? Because that is where they will talk about the limitations of the study and what can be done as future investigations. So reading up relevant journal articles, utilizing certain types of articles, papers written by experts in the relevant fields would be able to give us a better idea where we stand, whether our topic, our themes need to be revised. Many times we thought that we have a wonderful topic, but after reading up, after talking to some scholars, then we realize, the topic needs some revision. And this is something which I did not, put on the slide. I personally also like to talk to the practitioners. It's good to get their viewpoints. At the end of the day, I don't want my paper, only useful for publication, which is good, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. But more and more, I want to make sure it makes a real impact on the population concerned, the community concerned. People want to read. And as a result, the knowledge that you make in this particular field, that particular domain, makes a real impact on the community concerned. Well, number 4, you need to determine the scope of your research, what needs to be included, what needs to be excluded. It's not always possible to do everything, and this brings me to the 5th point, the feasibility of our research. I've seen a lot of situations, with my students or with my co-authors, when they want to do something great. The topic is wonderful, the theme is magnificent, but there will be a lot of constraints, and that will make the research, especially when it is carried out, not feasible. It could be due to population, respondents which are difficult to approach. It could be due to budget constraint. So these are things that we need to consider upfront. If the resources are there, by all means, we can proceed. But it's always good to, have forethoughts, think ahead, to come up with a robust research design, so that we can be, so that we can execute our research in an effective manner. The last point I would like to mention, determine the story that you want to tell and the story that your audience finds interesting. When I started writing, publishing, I just wanted to get my papers published. But again, progressively over the years, journal writing or journal publication is a way for me to communicate with my audience. So the story, the first paragraph, the second paragraph, how I conclude, how I end my argument, all this become more and more important to me because it's a means for me to communicate with my audience in an effective way. And through publication, we begin to network. We begin, authors contacting one another, readers contacting authors, and that's how we build network. That's how we build collaboration. So writing, publishing in many ways is more than just publication. It builds network, and it facilitates collaboration. And that happens when, readers or audience find our story interesting. So very quickly, these are things that I would like to share with all of you. It's not comprehensive, but something for you to consider. Now, as far as young consumer is concerned, being an editor-in-chief, I receive, I don't know how many papers per day, per week. So I felt it is necessary to put forward additional criteria, apart from, the aims and scope stipulated by the journal. I put forward another 5 conditions or criteria for your consideration. Number 1, it deals with young consumers who are 24 years and below. And when I receive papers, and the papers are about millennials, many authors forget millennials grow older over time. So millennials, according to the US sources, are no longer 24 years and below. So when you think about the topic, the theme of your paper, you must be sure that it is what the journal is after. And number 2, many papers use university students, young adults as their sample without really discussing or giving implications why these studies are relevant to young generations. So using young consumers as a sample in a convenient way without much discussion about why young consumers is also a reason why many papers to young consumers are that's rejected. Number 3, arguments should be supported by recent literature. It doesn't mean all literature is not useful, but argument must be supported by recent argument to show the recency, the relevance of scholarship. And number 5, especially when we are dealing with children and young consumers, data collected from the underage should always provide some clarification on ethics. And finally, when we look at a paper and it is it looks like thesis, it looks like a dissertation, it really puts off editors a lot. So these are things that young consumers would consider. I'm not sure about the other journals, but in general, I'm quite sure that apart from the aims and scope of the journal, we need to know what this journal is looking at. Some journals look at theoretical contribution. Some journal highlights managerial practical implications. So when we consider our topic and theme, we should always put all these into considerations. Now, very quickly before I end, these are just examples what I did in the past. How did I select my topic, my theme? Many a time I like to observe things, and based on what I observe, I read up. I look for relevant literature. So this is an example where I observe people taking selfie, and they like to take selfie whenever they do something they like. And I look at the comments. It's almost like a promotion, and they do this promotion for free. So I look up the articles, read what has been done, and to cut the story short, eventually we came up with a paper to compare selfie promotion and celebrity endorsement advertisement. And this paper is published in Internet Research. Well, I also select my topic and theme based on what the industry is doing. In fact, it is something which is strongly encouraged by a lot of editor-in-chief. So this is a paper I did together with industry people, those in the Ministry of Health. Once the report was done, we converted the report into an article. If you read this article, we did not really elaborate a lot on past literature because the focus, the emphasis is more on managerial contribution. So where do I get the idea? The idea was actually from the industry. And lastly, I'm from Sarawak, so I like to communicate with people through journal, through writing. So I like to promote not only, some of the famous cuisine in Sarawak. I like to promote indigenous food. And this indigenous food is less known to many, even though this indigenous group is the biggest indigenous group in Malaysia, in Sarawak, where I am. So I thought, why not I communicate through writing? So I wrote 3 papers. 2 of them were published in Journal of Ethnic Foods and Tourism Management. One particular reviewer wrote to me, in brief, he told me, thank you for the submission of this paper. I never realized about this particular food. Thank you for your paper. Now I know in Sarawak, in Borneo, you have this food, blah, blah, blah. So I'm quite happy with that comment. Of course, I still need to deal with a lot of comments, but I did it happily. I did it with, passion, because apart from getting the papers published, it is a way for me to communicate, promote what I love about my place to international audience. Anyway, I have a few more slides, but I think I should stop here. It's by no means comprehensive, but I hope you find them useful. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Hiram Ting, for your insightful and interesting session on the selection of relevant topics and themes for research papers. Moving on to the second session, that is on the structure of an ideal research papers from the journal perspective, presented by Professor Preeti Rawat. I would like to welcome Ms. Aisha and Mandari to introduce Professor Preeti Rawat.
Thank you very much, Majan. I would like now to introduce today Dr. Preeti Rawat. She is the Director HR at Sumaya Vidya Vihar University and working as a professor at KJ Sumaya Institute of Management, Mumbai, India. She is presently an editor-in-chief of Business, Perspective and Research Journal, published by Sage Publication and ranked C as per ABDC Journal ranking list. Her specialization in the research include organizational psychology, diversity and inclusion, leadership and empowerment. She has been awarded as a Best Professor in HRM confirmed by Higher Education Forum and Best Professor in HRM confirmed by Lokmat National Education Leadership Award back in February 2014. She was actively involved in consultancy and expertised in the various areas and actively working for consultancy project for client organization for behavioral training and part of the team involved to redesign organizational structure for SMEs in Maharashtra. Let's welcome Dr. Preeti to give us this interesting topic on the structure of an ideal of research papers from the journal's perspective. Please welcome Dr. Preeti. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody, and I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak before all of you. And I'm not doing any presentation, so this is more extempore, so I will give more opportunities during the Q&A sessions for specific questions. So coming to the topic that I have to be speaking on, and that is structure of an ideal research paper. So I will be talking more from my journal, that is Business Perspectives and Research. At the same time, I would also be touching upon generally how structuring of a paper is done so that it is acceptable to journals in general. So coming to the structure of the paper, the first thing that we have is the title of the paper. So the title of the paper should be interesting. Many times you find the title is very, what shall I say, staid in terms of you know already that this is a thoroughly researched area. So you find right from the beginning you'll understand what you are expecting, and therefore it may be a more a paper for a desk reject, and therefore try and have a title for your paper which is interesting, even though that area is a thoroughly researched area, but you have identified something which is still unresearched. So that is something that should come out in the title of your paper. Second thing that we would be looking for is that, is there a corresponding author mentioned? And these are some of the things I'm telling you where we at times send the paper back for adding these things and ask the author for a resubmission. So if supposing they've not identified who's the corresponding author, again you find it is sent back. The third thing that we also look for is the abstract. That is the tiny synopsis which is there before the paper is there. Now, our journal, we look at this abstract as one single paragraph. You would also find journals, especially like in Emerald, it's a structured abstract where you have specific, what is the objective, what are the variables used, what is the methodology, what are the key findings, limitations, and so on. So while this is all that we need for an abstract, but we prefer it as one single 200-word structured abstract, which is the one single paragraph. Now, in this, again, try and be, very judicious as far as the usage of words is concerned, so that in minimum words, you are able to put the gist of your paper. Okay, and it should also be interestingly written so that, yes, you understand, and plus some amount of, what shall I say, curiosity should be inbuilt, so that, you would like to read further. All right, the abstract is interesting. Let's also go to the introduction section. And in between the abstract and the introduction, you have keywords mentioned, 4 to 5 keywords. Now, many times I've also realized that many authors, they skip the addition of keywords. Again, you find the paper is sent back to the authors for addition of those keywords. Coming to the introduction part, now this is where, which is kind of, making or breaking the intention to read the paper further. So the introduction is something that has to be written in an intelligent manner. It should be a summation of your entire research. At the same time, it should not be a repetition, which means that you read the paper subsequently. It should not happen, oh, I've already read this thing earlier in the introduction part. So while the essence of the paper is captured in the introduction, it should not be a repetition of what you have are going to mention subsequently in your full paper. So in the introduction, write, in a manner that the interest of the editor or the reviewing team is sustained for them to continue to read the paper subsequently. A couple of papers I've read which have been submitted to our journal, where they link it to something which is ongoing. For example, like in the pandemic, you find a lot of papers were written in how pandemic is generating research, but not all of them are interesting enough to be published, right? So, for example, pandemic has led to rise of lot of issues with reference to, say, anxiety, with reference to say diversity issues, whether are women losing job, or is it opening an opportunity for them to work from home and therefore creating more opportunities. So you'll find lot many things are a fallout of say pandemic and therefore say supposing you want to study the area of well-being. Now, well-being need not always be related to stress. Well-being could be also in terms of the extent to which you are able to create an environment of thriving. So there are companies who have created offices for people in their homes by providing them all kinds of facilities. So to what extent you can compare the performance pre and during pandemic and perhaps post-pandemic. So something interesting is you pick up, and therefore you'll find that in the introduction, they will link it to the current ongoing situation and then come to the area of research. Then they are going to talk a little bit about the construct that they are wanting to study and what are some of the key findings. So when you read all of this in the introduction, you find, hey, here's a paper which is very contemporary. At the same time, it is also throwing light on something which is still not been studied. And therefore, introduction is something that and you would also have found that a lot of standard researchers would tell you that introduction is something that you add to the paper the last, which means after your paper has been put together, you've understood your paper, is the time that you write the introduction. So that introduction, it captures the essence of the paper. At the same time, it also allows the curiosity to be sustained so that you end up reading the full paper. So this is something which is a beauty of an introduction, which you should be very mindful of when you are doing. And as you're doing it, obviously there is a lot of in-text referencing that you do. Now this has to be as per what the journal follows. Like my journal, Business Perspectives and Research, we follow the APA guidelines, that is American Psychological Association guidelines of referencing, whether it's in-text or the referencing behind. So please follow this. Another thing that I would like to also add here is choice of journal. So whatever you are publishing, and if you've identified a journal, read couple of issues to see, is your theme, somewhere covered by that journal? If it is being covered, which aspect of it has been done? And then when you when you submit your paper should be referring to those references and saying that there, perhaps this, for example, if it is say diversity, and in diversity supposing it is gender, in gender supposing you're talking of say empowerment of women. Now if it is say psychological empowerment, you'll say your paper cited, and then you put the citation talked about say the economic empowerment. My paper is adding say to the psychological empowerment. So there somewhere you are extending the research that that journal has published in another direction, and then the editor would be more keen to take it. Why? Because a particular theme has been extended and carried forward by this new research that they are presenting, or they are wanting it to be published in it. Okay, so this again becomes very important, is a choice of journal. So be very mindful when you are choosing a theme, and you are trying to link it with the journal that you have in mind. Then come to the review of literature. So as far as structuring of the paper is concerned, then as an editor, what is it that I would look for in the review? Now here, two things are very important from our journal perspective. One is when you identify a construct, yes, the construct has to be defined. There has to be an operational definition of that construct. So that operational definition somewhere has to be, coming towards when you are putting your review of literature together. Along with that, the recent papers in this field need to be cited. That is very, very essential. So if it is 2022, your paper has been submitted, at least till 2021, whatever work has happened, that has to be, referred to there. If you have papers till say 2015, or perhaps say 2012, then we would send it back that recent work is missing, or we would also give you a couple of references to look into for you to further enrich. Now, why will an editor do this? This is going to happen only in those papers where the theme that you've identified, or perhaps the results that you are getting, or perhaps the direction of a discussion that your paper has taken is little different. Then the editorial team is helping you out to fill in the gaps so that your paper becomes interesting for it to be published. Okay, so these are some of the things that you have to be very mindful of when you are talking of the review of literature. Then comes the result part. Now, at times I've seen some people or some authors feel that more the tables that you add, more it's going to appear, a very, very well-researched area. I would say be judicious as far as putting your tables are concerned. So your table should be exhaustive enough to give as much data as possible. So with minimum tables, you should be able to explain all your hypotheses and your research questions. Okay, so this becomes very, very important. And before you're putting your results, obviously your research methodology, what research methodology you've used, a small description of the research methodology is very much needed. If it is a qualitative paper, then again it requires a detailing as far as results are concerned in terms of what are some of the key questions that you have asked, how, in what direction it is taking, and also citation of key themes and how those themes have been generated and so on. So this becomes very important, whether it's a quantitative or a qualitative paper, and how you are handling it. Coming to the discussion part, couple of things are important, and that is what we look for is again significance of the study. So by the time we reach the discussion part, the question that will come up in our mind is, so what? Right. So this so what has to be addressed by the significance of the study. Why is this study important? Right. So if it is empowerment, and if I'm talking of psychological empowerment, then why is psychological empowerment important? What is it that it does to employees in an organization, whether it is men or women? Does it allow them to be more effective? Does it allow them to be more confident as far as decision making is concerned? Does it allow them to be more open to learning new experiences? What is it that you find this result that you have got is trying to arrive at? So the significance becomes very important, and you have to relate your findings to similar other works that have happened in the past, which means that your research is taking a direction that already previous researchers have taken. And if your results are counterintuitive, then it becomes all the more exciting a paper to be looking into. Why? Because here you have something which is running to the contrary of what general perception is about, yet it is giving you results. So suppose you are getting a counterintuitive paper, my suggestion to you would be that instead of submitting it straight away, do a subsequent research again. Perhaps you will change your methodology. You may, from a quantitative, you can do a qualitative, or you can do an experiment and try and substantiate what you are getting. Put the two studies together. So in your results section, you'll have study 1, you'll have study 2, but your discussion is going to be common, right? And that's, adds to the rigor of your work, and the probability of it being published becomes very high. Okay, so this is as far as your discussion is concerned. And then, yes, what are the implications, the theoretical implications, the managerial implications, if it is more for the workplace, limitations, definitely, please don't forget to add limitations of your study. Some limitations, people may just add mindlessly. For example, there's a sample size is a limitation, or they'll say, the study was done only in X part of the country, and therefore it's not easily, it's not easy to replicate it. And all these are very weak limitations. Limitations should be such which were actually not in your control. Sample size is definitely under your control. Getting data from a wider geography is certainly in your control. So here, the editorial team is going to send it back to you. What did you do to handle or to address these limitations? Okay, so limitations are not just for the sake of writing few lines. All right, these are my limitations. This is the genuine limitations which could not have been done seeing the scope of your work or the nature of your work. For example, we were some time back, we were doing a study on the LGBT issues, and because of confidentiality, we could not reach out to lot many sample, and therefore our data set was small. Okay, and therefore we mentioned it that because of the topic, you find people are not willing to come out in the open, and therefore, this becomes a limitation for the study. Why? Because this is not in our hands in terms of, getting data from people who are not willing to disclose their identities. So this is how you find limitation has to be addressed with a lot of authenticity. We should be able to feel that as authors, as editors, yes, the author has made a genuine attempt to address the limitations, and then future directions where the study can lead to. Which are some of the areas where the study can have an impact? That becomes very important. And one more thing that I would also want to tell you is that there has to be a strong narrative in your paper. From the, the introduction, as I'm reading, while this is a piece of a scientific work, it should have a strong narrative. Now, narrative doesn't mean that you're going to write it in first person. No, it can still be in third person, but there is a story to it. When you're reading, you find, yes, it's interesting. You know, result sections also, it's written in English. It's not only, when I say English, I mean, it's not only a collection of numbers. There is a story to it till you find the paper ends. And then referencing, please do not miss out any references which are there in your in-text. They have to be there in your end referencing. And copy editing is a must. Do not send a paper without doing any copy editing to it. So these are in general what, business perspectives and research. It's a C category journal, but it's fast coming up. It is a paper which accepts empirical work and also accepts, a review of literature. But again, that has to be an area which is less researched, something which is already researched. And if you're going to send me a review of literature, then it would be desk rejected. As far as the similarity index is concerned, try and keep it as low as possible. We accept a similarity up to 20% and below. Anything above that, again, we send it back to the authors. There are journals which are still, higher ranked. They are going to accept much more stringent, percentage as far as similarity is concerned. What else? All right, that's from my side. Any questions? As when you find you open the forum for Q&A, if there are anything where I can help you, I'm certainly open. So that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Preeti Rawat, for providing us with an interesting insight on how to structure and go through research papers from a journal perspective. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next open forum discussion. So the next open forum discussion is on demystifying techniques of building a good paper for journal publications, what editor wants. The moderator is Dr. Ahmed Alhadi. Dr. Ahmed Alhadi is an assistant professor at the College of Banking and Financial Study. He is at the Department of Postgraduate Studies and Research Department. He has many publications in high quality, top-ranked A-star journals. I would like to mention that if you had any questions, feel free to participate with their questions and queries in the chat box. So use that as a chance for you to raise your questions and your concern. I would like to also request Professor Hiram Ting and Professor Preeti Rawat to join the open forum discussion. Dr. Ahmed Alhadi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Majan, and thanks for the CBFS and the respected guest and attendants and CBFS staff as well. And thank you, Professor Hiram Ting and Professor Preeti Rawat. And I believe when listening to stuff that brought up by both editors, I was really impressed and at the same time embarrassed. How can I moderate stuff like this? But I would like to categorize discussion, and this is my philosophy. And when I categorize the discussions, I can see that the editor almost covers most of the authors or related to papers and author stuff. But there is no way no discussions being brought up about the editors, about the journals, and about the editor's mind. And I think that is very important because, as you say, and both editors said, how to choose a journal is very important, because I think choosing a journal is a strategically important point to reduce the time and cost and speed of publications. And therefore, my questions maybe goes to Professor Hiram Ting, and I would investigate and understand more about how editor strategically choose their topic. How do you think there's always agenda, or there's something in mind? How they categorize, because you know they at the end of the month they will find, or before any special issue or any regular issue, they will have different miscellaneous topics, and some of these topics really deserve strong attention or to publish, but you feel that no. And I brought one example to say that, for example, I submit one paper, it's very strong paper really about a royal family and financial reporting risk in JAPP, you know, Journal of Accounting Public Policy. This is a very strong one. And the editors back to me within 2 days that the paper is really well-written paper, but he believed that this paper will not be cited a lot, given that the royal family only available in GCC, and they reject the paper. So what? And so, question to Hiram to make enlightening us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for the question. Now, I cannot speak on behalf of other editors-in-chief. I will just share my thought, my reaction as an editor-in-chief when I receive papers with diverse topics. Now, we must understand that editors-in-chief are human as well, and they have many engagement, a lot of commitments. So, like it or not, the first impression of the paper plays a big part. The title, the abstract, and like I said earlier, even the first paragraph, the first impression of the paper plays a big part in the mind of the editors-in-chief. You know, the title may suggest what the study is about. It doesn't say too much until we read. So we will read, but for authors, in order to make the editor's life a little easier, it will be useful if the paper is crafted, edited in such a manner that it motivates editor-in-chief to keep reading from the abstract to the first paragraph, to the second paragraph, to the third paragraph. So that will be my first point. When a paper is done, don't submit immediately. Sleep on it for a few days, for 1 week, for 2 weeks, because you can always improve to make it better and better and better. So regardless of what topics you may be writing about, that would be the first point. Now, as far as young consumers is concerned, it accepts not only marketing papers, it also accepts papers in management, in tourism, in hospitality, in education, in anthropology, as long as it deals with young consumers who are 24 years and below. Not only editors can be busy at times, we do not want to trouble our reviewers who review the papers voluntarily for us. And therefore, when we go through the papers, if we believe that it will not get through review process, then editor-in-chief will likely make the decision that this paper will be thus rejected. For young consumer, I have the statistics, but I cannot remember the number. I don't know. Every week there could be 10 submissions, and this is only one journal which I manage. I have a few special issues in other journals as well. So you can imagine that the way the paper is written, regardless of what topics the papers may be, is critically important to motivate editors and later on reviewers to read and provide their comments. So for young consumers, like I said, it welcomes various topics, but make sure I would like to conclude two things. Number one, positioning is clear. Number two, contribution is clear. So positioning is about the story you want to tell. Contribution is about, the knowledge, the practical value that you would like, that this paper will contribute to this particular domain. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor. And Professor Prati, do you want to comment on that?
Professor Hiram has covered most of the points, and I completely agree with him in terms of what is it, the interest level has to be sustained throughout. And what I would want to add on is that, and to answer your question, is that the paper may not be cited a lot. So to address this issue, the relevance portion of your discussion has to be really strong. The where is this piece of research going to? So maybe this has begun a new branch as far as research, and then subsequent researching would be happening in that particular direction. You may be the first person to initiate a particular theme, which is then going to have a cascading effect, and multiple similar researches would also come up in near future. So for that, it should show sufficient scope that yes, your theme or your topic can be sustained with multiple variables for others to take it forward. And if your paper has that kind of a scope, I'm sure the editor is going to take it as an acceptance paper and publish it. So while it can be a unique research, you may feel, and if the editor writes to you, that the possibility of rejection, or not rejection, possibility of citation is low, I think you should write back to the editor that, I have created, the implication of my research, and these are the ways in which it can be taken further. Or if supposing you have a researcher, a PhD student under you, you can say that already my students are working and are taking this theme forward. So somewhere you'll have to create. So when when you're submitting a paper, there is also an option of writing to the editor. You can send an email to the editor. Right, rather than just writing a formal mail, my paper titled XYZ is being submitted. It is here that you build a case. Why do you feel that your paper is unique? Why do you feel that this is going to excite a researcher's mind for subsequent researches to be happening in the future? And then you find you've built a case for it, and I'm sure the editor is going to look at it much, much more positively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. And
Dr. Ahmed, before going to the next one, I think Mr. Jamal has got one question. Let him ask, and then we can go to next question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anand. I would like to ask one issue which I'm facing regarding the research. Actually, I'm doing research regarding forensics analysis, and my question is to Professor Preeti. I'm doing research regarding forensics analysis, and the problem is that I need to, deter the crime against children. Okay. Now the solution is available in another domain, that is the machine learning. Okay. Now when I'm combining these two fields, so then the reviewer most of the time, maybe they are related to forensics. They give their views according to that, and if someone is related to machine learning, they give their reviews according to that. So I didn't find consensus whenever I asked for the review, and then contribution sometimes are not taken to that field. Okay, like what I contributed, they say it is related to machine learning. It is not related to forensics. Okay, so here I find it difficult. Yeah.
So can you have a direct questions, because we have just give a direct question.
Yeah. How easily we can show when we are dealing with two domains, okay, of knowledge, how easily we can contribute, we can connect contribution to these domains to publish the paper easily.
Sir Hiram?
Yeah.
Professor
Sorry,
Hiram, yeah.
I think the question is directed to Professor Preeti.
Preeti, yeah, Preeti.
Okay, all right. What I feel is that your problem lies in the choice of journal. So you will have to select, say, a paper in the space of technology where human behavior is also one of their, the scope. So if human behavior is also part of their scope, for example, if it's a paper, say, in the field of, say, computers, where obviously machine learning is there, but its impact on, and then there is a human dimension also which they find. So behavioral, so when you're reading the scope of the journal, look for, is the journal also publishing behavioral issues and technology, an amalgamation of this? And you will find there are a lot of journals which are there today where human dimensions and, or any human, what shall I say, behavior, along with, say, a technology interface is getting published. And there are various journals. So somewhere, if you choose your journal wisely, this problem will get addressed. Professor Hiram, if you would like to add something here.
No, I think it's good. The choice of journal is important, especially when you are dealing with two different domains. Now, from another perspective, it's always good to do transdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research. So it all depends on the way you justify, the way you make your argumentations, so the editors, reviewers understand what you try to deliver. So either the choice of journal or the way you write in order to justify, the synergy of these two particular domains.
Okay,
thank you,
Mr. Hiram, and thank you, Preeti, as well. I would also like to discuss very important, really part of publication, and this might embarrass editor as well, and you have the right to answer that or not. My question is, do you think the affiliated university and author names gives privileges to the paper to be published in your journals, or is not? And how you handle that? Thank you.
The answer is straightforward. Is a straightforward no. We like to look at the story. Like I said earlier, for me, positioning of the paper and contribution of the paper is important, and that would basically determine the outcome of the paper, at least at the preliminary stage. Having said that, I hope this is an appropriate platform for me to share maybe one inconvenience truth. Perhaps this is what Dr. Ahmad wants to know. And that is, being the editor, we like our paper to be read. Sorry, we like the journal to be read. We like the papers to be cited. And we cannot absorb so many papers all the time. So there will always be papers which are not so bad, yet they are just rejected. We don't want to burden our reviewers and all that. And therefore, for authors, you need to look at the papers published in the particular journal, to look at those patterns which are not clearly written on the MSAM scope. For example, some journals, some editors may like to look into studies which compare 2 or 3 countries. Why? Because paper, with multi-group analysis between countries may be more appealing to authors or wider audience. Again, it doesn't compromise the quality of the paper, but in general, studies like this may be more appealing. Studies that use experimental design, longitudinal design, quality must come first, but these things may play a part. Being in Malaysia, I also receive a lot of papers from Malaysia because they know the editor-in-chief is from Malaysia. Now, this is another thing which we are very careful, and that is we don't want the journal to be dominated by authors from the same country. So again, this is not a written rule, but this is something that we are always mindful of to make sure that this journal is truly an international journal. It should be read by a wider audience. It should be cited, and it covers and we have diverse authors from different countries. University prestigious, prestige and all that doesn't really play a big role. But if we receive a paper from a guru, from an expert, again, this is another inconvenience truth. We tend not to reject. We will leave it to the reviewers to decide. But after that, we will look at the paper again. So perhaps it's a good thing for the authors to co-author with a guru, perhaps to stand a better chance. But again, it is not a rule. It may happen. Over to you.
So, yeah, unmute yourself, Dr. Ahmed. Unmute. Ahmed, you're muted.
Thank you to Dr. Hiram for this confessing. My next question is to Preeti. Do you think, Professor Preeti, the review, is that really the independent review is truly independent? You can see many paper is pre-printed in SSRN, for example, and pre-printed platforms. And not even that, many journals nowadays, most recently my paper published in British Account Review, they asked me before they accepted to send the paper through the SSRN to check the feedback of people and comments for 7 months. 7 months, and this is really, it really threatened me sometimes. So do you think there is really independent review? Because nowadays when I receive paper from different journals, when I read the paper, I know this is belong to somebody, I know him, or I can go check the preprint and I know the name. Then if this is from Harvard, of course, I will not reject the paper. And because, the time spent and 100 years of work in Harvard, the procedure of accepting people in Harvard, the paper to issue in Harvard is not, it's really huge quality and efforts. So how to deal with that, Professor Preeti?
As far as our journal is concerned, we do not use this route of checking it through SSRN. Papers are submitted to us directly. It is a double-blind peer review process, which means once the paper clears the editor's desk, it is assigned to associate editors, and they are going to assign it to 2 independent reviewers.
No, but Dr. Preeti, but if you get a paper, it's easy to check in the internet if that paper submitted to you should not request, but sometimes author themselves, they with the good names, of course, there's always a big fish and there's a small fish. So small fish, they will not put the paper in SSRN, but the big fish usually they submit their paper in the preprint, but a reviewer, when they read the paper, they can easily check it in the internet, and this is the norms.
So we do that often. If we are reading a paper and we feel that yes, as you're saying, this paper appears to have been read, or generally also we just key in those keywords and we try and see whether this paper has been published. A related thing that we face is that, and this is generally from young researchers, is that their research work, they are going to slice it into 3-4 papers. So their sample is the same, and they have come out with 3-4 papers where and there is what is called self-plagiarism, which means that their subsequent paper is going to plagiarize their previous paper. So one they are going to submit it to my journal, one perhaps to say Dr. Hiram's journal. So like this, you find they are going to distribute it, assuming that yes. So these are some of the things which also we discourage. If there is too much of self-plagiarism or similarity, again, we send it back with the copy of paper which is already there, that this paper is, say, almost a replica of your initial work, while you may have added one variable here and there just to say that, yes, we are expanding the body of knowledge, but technically these are all twins of each other, and therefore we do not encourage those things. And similarly, if we have found a paper which is very much similar, we again send it back to the author that, this paper already. So for us, while we are a small journal, we see to it that whatever we are publishing is something which is to our best of knowledge unique. So while there is a business of publications, there is a lot of malpractices, because this is also a business. There are multiple malpractices which are on in this, and therefore we try and see how we keep the reputation of our journal clean. We try and be as authentic as possible as far as the process and the business of publishing is concerned.
Great. Dr. Ahmed, there is one question from the audience. So Dr. Tamanna, she has a question here. Does citation have a role to play while choosing your research themes or journals? This is the question from the audience.
The potential citation, she means potential citation of the paper.
I think so.
Yeah, the potential citation.
Does the citation have a role?
If I can take this now, see, when I said that when you are choosing a journal, see whether similar work has been published or the trail of research has been carried forward. So if when I'm talking of the trail of research, it means that somebody else has already worked in that area and your research is taking that thing forward. So when you're doing that, then the possibility of citation does increase. Professor Hiram, so you may want to add.
Do you go for open citation or open access? Because some journals, they offer this. Sometime I can say is a free gift. Yeah, a free gift citation. Yeah.
See, this is these days published. If you see publishers, they give you these options of open access, gold access, and so on. And if you go by those, and so you pay, and then your paper is open for faster download, easier download. It's more available, and therefore your citation increases. But by and large, if you see our journal Business Perspectives and Research, the default submission is that it is only to the journal, and it is we do not charge any article processing fee. There is no payment involved, so all that we are doing is publishing authentic research. But yes, there is a business around it. Yes.
Yeah, so good. Professor Hiram, do you have action plan usually submitted from the editor or from the journals for you when they assign you as a chief editor for shifting the journal from one rank to another? You consider rankings, as you can see in the advertisement today. In this event, they put rank A, A, B, D, C, rank C, and there's different and several ranks, ABS and SGR and ABDC. Do you take that in your mind when they sign as chief editor or editor-in-chief for our journals? And do you have a specific period to reach a stage of, maybe B and C, whatever?
Well, I would be lying if I say those rankings do not play a part. But as far as young consumers is concerned, it is not the case, because part of my research is related to young consumers anyway, youth empowerment. And I remember I first submitted a paper to young consumers in 2015, and the paper was rejected. So I started the journey with young consumer with a paper being rejected. But young consumers is still one of my targets, because part of my research is related to young consumers. So yes, ranking does play a part, but more than that, like what I said earlier, it's more about how I can communicate with my audience, how I can make an impact on the community concerned through my research. I believe in the long term, to be known by your work, by the impact of your work on the community concerned will be more rewarding. Taking nothing away from the importance of ranking, we need that for promotion for many reasons, but to be more satisfying at the end of the day, it will be the fact that you know your work made a real impact on the population concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Hiram. Preeti, do you want to add to that?
I think Professor Hiram has addressed it pretty well. So okay. Nothing from my side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Dr. Ahmed. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Ahmed, can we take one question from audience? Sarfaraj Javed is there. So Sarfaraj Javed, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Yeah, please go ahead. Sarfaraj. Sarfaraj, are you asking question?
I think he's muted.
Yeah, but he has been allowed. But
okay, I will use the time then. Again, do you think? I think nowadays with number of submissions increased, and you can see that. And how you secured good quality reviewers, given that you don't have submission fees and you don't have funding on that as well. And many also good reviewer really is not ready to spend time in B and C journals. And I can see that with different my friends in Australia and UK. And do you have any way to overcome such issues, a shortage of reviewers, and do you encourage them? Do you, maybe Dr. Professor Hiram, then Preeti?
Yeah, sure. You are right. To get good reviewers, consistent reviewers, reviewers who perform on time, in time, all the time is can be difficult. So what I do, it is absolutely necessary to know these reviewers. So these reviewers are not just names in the system. I actually know them, talk to them, work with them. And if there's any online conference, we invite them as a keynote speaker, as a panel speaker. And if there's any webinar, we can involve them. We can work with their institutions on certain collaborative projects. So in short, we actually know these reviewers. If we know them, we send an invitation to them via the system, but personally, we write a message. Come on, please help me, do me a favor. We need this paper done in the next 2 weeks. Then because of that value exchange proposition, it makes things a lot easier. So we have reviewers whom we don't know, I don't know, but we have reviewers whom I know, and you always, want to assign a paper to 1 or 2 reviewers whom you know, another 1 or 2 reviewers whom you know less or you don't know, to balance things up. Eventually, you can make decision based on 2 reviewers, 2 comments. Comments for 2 reviewers if they are not contradicting. If they are contradicting, then we have to invite or we have to get, another reviewer to comment. So that's how I approach it. Again, I agree with you. It is a challenge, and therefore it has to be more than just, reviewing. A lot of things needs to be done.
I think this is really very hidden things, and we brought up in this conference because many authors, they know the process is very systematic, and the system submit, the system select, and there is really hard work of editor. And I believe editor reject a paper, and he is really regretting to reject papers because They always, sometimes you reject a paper here and you find some published in A-star, then you really regret it. That's really good a paper, but given with pressure, not finding reviewers, and you just miss out the opportunity to publish that paper. So I let many questions in the audience. Dr. Anand, you might, I have many questions.
Yeah.
So it's really
we have some. I think Ms. Aisha, can you please ask your question? Ms. Aisha?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, please ask your question.
Yes, my simple question will come in as I have an interesting topic with a catchy title, but it's relevant to my country. How can I convince the editors that it's really worth being in their publication? Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. This is a good question. Maybe Preeti? Professor Preeti?
Yes, I have faced this challenge as editor. Like, for example, if I get, specifically, like I got, some papers, say, from Malaysia. I got a paper from Japan. For me to understand the context, because every problem has a context. It has to be contextualized. And therefore, if I have, say, a reviewer from India, perhaps the essence may be lost. And therefore, we as a team with me, we saw to it that we got at least one reviewer from that country, where specifically we wrote that, since this paper is contextualized in this country, we would want your view on. One is obviously the way the paper is written, the quality, everything. That is one part. The second part is contextualization of the paper, so that whether it's really addressing those issues and so on. So that is a way in which I have addressed, where one reviewer we try and get. And in the process, what happens, it may take a little more time. And that is where, the authors become a little impatient that, it's been, so many weeks and we're not getting any response. But what happens behind the scenes is that we are trying to do justice to that paper rather than, getting any reviewer. We're trying to do justice to that paper so that the paper finds a light at the end of the day.
So, Ms. Aisha, maybe the background is very important to write very strong setting about the country and summarize what the editor wants to know about the institution. And that will help the editor to find tuning the paper with a good reviewers, or at least to avoid the discouraging. Professor Hiram, do you face any issue like that? Small country maybe, or not economic significant country, you have a good paper but you reject it?
It depends on which type of paper. If it is a case study, then of course context specific would be important. If it is an empirical paper, research paper, we look at knowledge contribution more. You need to justify using a fun approach why this is important in Asia before you narrow down to a specific place in India, in Malaysia, in Oman. So the way it is written and the type of paper that you're aiming for could play a part. So if it is an empirical paper and the first line begins with the context of a specific place, that may not be a good way to begin with. You may want to begin with a bigger context in order to make it appealing to a bigger audience, and slowly, gradually, why this particular market, this particular destination. So the way you argue, you make your point could build a better argument why this paper should be considered.
So Dr. Ravindra Kaikini, can you please unmute yourself and speak? You have a question, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. This is a question to Professor Hiram, or even I think Professor Preeti could answer perhaps. Considering the conceptual papers without too many tables and empirical tables with a lot of tables, which one would the editor prefer generally? I'm talking from the point of view of ABDC as well as Q1 and Q2 papers, journals.
It all depends. Thank you for the question. It all depends on what the paper is about. If it is a paper that uses quantitative research, then we will expect more tables. But if there are too many tables, like what Professor Preeti said earlier, where these 3 tables can easily be combined as one table. So it is not done in a parsimonious way, in a concise manner. So for article, we like, information to be delivered in a concise manner. For qualitative paper, perhaps, tables will be less. But for many journals, especially journals in Emerald Publishing, they have this system that would reduce or that would force authors to reduce the number of words for each table. So in general, too many tables make reading difficult. So you have to think about the paper, how to deliver, how to present the ideas in the most effective way. So that will be my general take.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. What would be the ideal number of the tables, sir, please, if you could kindly highlight on that? Is there anything such kind of a thing? Ideal, the number of tables, maybe 5 or 10 or 12
no,
or whatever.
I don't have any magic number for table, but perhaps Professor Preeti could enlighten us. So it's all about whether the tables or the number of the tables are presented in a way that it presents the story in an effective way.
Yeah, as I know, there is always a scope of the journals. They don't quantify table. They ask you when you submit number of tables and number of words. But there's we know in the field that there's very famous that they publish qualitative journal papers, and this is published quantitative journals. So in the discipline itself, we categorize journal itself, but doesn't mean that the quantitative journal will only publish quantitatives, because sometimes they publish policy papers, which is narratives paper, more and less. Do you have any question, Dr. Anand, from Vraz, maybe?
Yeah, I just ask Dr. Vidya to please ask your question. Unmute yourself and please ask your question quickly. Dr. Vidya, please.
Vidya, okay.
Okay.
Vidya.
Okay. So if Vidya is not there, Dr. Maithiri, you are there?
Yes, Dr. Anand, I'm there.
Yeah, please go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a question for both of you as editors. I was just wondering, now when we submit a paper, which is either qualitative or quantitative, as an editor, do you have a preference that you would rather accept a quantitative paper over a qualitative paper? Or like if I'm going to write a paper, I'm writing one now, which is using thematic analysis to do interview scripts analysis. So would that paper receive an equal preference, or would it be like not valued as much as a paper would be using an ANOVA or a correlation analysis? That's one question. The second question is, when you as a journal, do you have like in each issue a fixed percentage that you are going to accept X number of papers which are qualitative and X number of papers which are quantitative, or it is just that based on the papers that come to you, you decide that? Is there a predefined percentage breakout?
Okay, if I may go first, to answer the second question, there is no fixed number for qualitative or quantitative paper. It all depends on the type of paper we receive and the outcome of the review process. To answer the first question, we welcome both qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, papers using different design. But again, it's all about your justification. For example, for young consumers, if you are collecting data from, if this is a study about children, and if you use quantitative survey, then editor or reviewers have every right to scrutinize, to understand how and why you would use, questionnaire to collect data from children. So it's not really about the approach per se. It's more about justification. Why quantitative approach? Why qualitative approach? And that will be how we decide whether the paper should progress any further.
So we will have one more last question from the audience. So there is one question from audience that he has a little doubt like. So he is asking that we know the journals took sufficient time to review and make decisions, but I found some papers which shocked me by shortening the whole process and published the paper in a week, starting from the submission to publish. It took not more than 7 days. And these journals are very reputed as well. What are the circumstances where the EIC can take these kind of actions? This is his experience, it seems.
Yeah. Do you have anything here, Preeti? Do you face such work? You publish a paper
No.
by your acceptance without sending to review. It seemed that the paper did not send for reviewers because the editor accepted. Because I got one paper.
I would say here, supposing it's an invited paper, you know somebody who's an authority in a particular field, and it is an invited paper, and the paper is there, and you find you are, putting an issue together. There is space, then you may perhaps add that paper. Such papers generally it is at the associate editor level that they are reviewed. It's not sent to a set of reviewers. That's the only possibility that I can see where such a thing can happen. Otherwise, it will not happen. Only if it is, a person who's an authority has been invited to write, the person has sent you the work, and then you publish.
Well, yeah, I think so. I face several. I meet the Dr. Adrian. He's the dean.
The time difference.
I meet the dean of Taiwan University, Dr. Adrian, and he's a friend of mine, and he got paper accepted within 10 days in JCF A-star. And he said the paper, because they use different approach, they different methods. He thought the editor, if send it to reviewer, the reviewer will reject the paper because this is a new approach that not being applied in finance. And that's why the paper, he said, he will suffer to find a reviewer, and the paper looks great from a good professor, and he accept the paper. I face also same issue. My paper accepted within a day in A journals, accounting and finance, and without sent for reviewers, the editor accepted, and the paper within two years they get highly cited in A journals, like maybe 200 citation. So sometimes the editor is really picky and reading the topic and the methods and understand the challenges. If the paper sent for review or sometime maybe accept or maybe invited paper like Dr. Preeti. Do you face anything related, Professor Hiram?
Not with young consumers, definitely, but I've seen this happening. So like what Professor Preeti mentioned earlier, it could be an invited paper, or it could be the editorial for a special issue. Or it could be a paper which editors really like, unfortunately. But for Emerald Publishing, it is not a good thing to do, because whenever you do that, it will be alerted and it will be recorded in your performance. So I've seen it, but definitely not the journals that I manage.
Thank you, Dr. Hiram. Thank you, Dr. Preeti, for your discussion. It was really so pleasure to moderate these discussions. And Dr. Anand, please, the floor for you now.
Okay. Doctor, there is one question. We welcomed Professor Justin Powell here. So I think for him it's very early morning, like in the morning. At the beginning, Professor Hiram said he is at 6 o'clock, but now for him it's I think around 7 o'clock a.m. Okay, so there is one quick before starting, since you are there in the forum discussion. So there is one question by the participant from Sri Lanka. So I think I will ask this question to Justin, Professor Justin, and later on we will move on to his session. So the question here is, the author is asking, I am working with the paper in South Asian and East Asian context under 6 different countries. So I was done with my hypothesis each of every country, including 6 tables. Is it going to percentage of rejection? This is the question.
I didn't understand the question. So it is a multi-country study. So I guess such a paper, I'm sure, would be rich as far as data is concerned and contribution to research is concerned. So according to me, it should be an interesting paper.
Okay, thank you. I think with this, we can conclude this session. I think we will thank you for all panel discussants. I think now the Professor Justin Paul is here. So we will move on to Professor Justin Paul. I think over to Ms. Majan.
Okay. Good afternoon or good evening once again. The third session will be presented by Professor Jason Paul. It's basically on do's and don'ts on publishing and quality management journals. I would like to mention that a link before proceeding to Ms. Aisha to present Professor Jason Paul, a link of a feedback link will be posted shortly in the chat box. Please spend some time and fill the feedback form before the session ends. Ms. Aisha?
Thank you very much, Majan, and I would like to this opportunity to welcome Dr. Justin with us. Good morning for you. Dr. Justin Paul is presently a professor at University of Reading, UK, and University of Puerto Rico, USA. He's also editor-in-chief of International Journal of Consumer Studies, published by John Wiley and Sons Group and ranked as A, as per ABDC journal ranking list. He has introduced the Mastage model and Measure for Brand Management CPP model for internationalization, Scope framework for small firms, and 7P framework for international marketing. His articles have been downloaded over 800,000 times during the last 6 years. He is ranked among the world's top 0.1% highly cited researchers based on Web of Science statistics, with citation increasing of 500 per month in 2021. With an H index 45, an author of over 130 research papers in SSCI journals, Dr. Justin has over 70 papers in A or A star journals. He has also served as an associate professor at Nagoya University, Japan, and as department chair at IIM. In addition, he has taught full courses at Aarhus University, Denmark, Grenoble École de Management, and University of Versailles, France, University Louisiana, Warsaw, Poland, and have been also a visiting professor at University of Chicago, Vienna University, Austria, Fudan, and UIBE, China, UAB, Barcelona, and Madrid, and has published 3 best-selling case studies with Ivy and Harvard. He has visited over 60 countries as a visiting professor as well as a resource person. With this interesting CV, and we would like to welcome Dr. Paul with us to the interesting topics of do's and don'ts on publishing and quality journals. Welcome.
Unmute yourself. Unmute.
Thank you, Professor Anand and Aisha, for the invitation and introduction. And I do have some ideas and some tips and some strategies for you to publish, and I would like to share that, and I would like to have this as an interactive session. I would like to begin with what is International Journal of Consumer Studies, and then I would go on to, in general, some ideas for publishing in different journals, including our journal. I am heading International Journal of Consumer Studies for more than, so I completed 2 years, and this is my 3rd year now. And this is a journal with 2,000 plus submission, and that simply means that this is a journal that receives third maximum submissions, or third or fourth maximum submissions in the field of business management, and it is the journal with second maximum submissions in the consumer research and marketing field in the world. So this is a journal which has a legacy of 46 years old, and it is having an impact factor of 4 and size score of 7, and we are expecting 2021 impact factor anywhere between 6 to 7, and 2022 impact factor 7 to 9. And we consider papers in different subject areas ranging from consumer marketing to consumer finance. And we also consider papers that integrate information technology in different walks of life, which has implications on consumers. So we cover a lot of topics, which is almost like under the sun. We have broadened our territory in terms of considering papers without restrictions on what we can consider, but we do not consider papers which have nothing to do with the consumers. So our goal is to have the best journal in the world, undoubtedly. So we are trying our best, and we have a dedicated team of 20 associate editors coming from different countries and coming from different universities. And with these remarks, I would like to give you some general inputs about publishing in general, because rather than trying to talk more about our journal, maybe you might be looking for some inputs about publishing in general on the basis of my experience as an editor and as an author. So let me share my slide. Should be. Can you allow me to present? It's open share key, right? Present is an open share key, right, in MS Teams? Screen share.
There is an up arrow at the top, no? That's I have given permission already as a presenter.
Okay. So
there is an up arrow at the top.
Okay, yeah. Says it's sharing.
Yes. Coming. Yeah, your screen is visible now.
Okay, my PPT is visible?
No, not PPT are not shown. PPT you have to click on PPT. Yeah. Yes, make it full screen, please. Slide.
Yeah, can you see my PPT now?
Yeah. Perfect. Go ahead, bro.
Okay. Yeah, so my idea today is to give you some tips about what to do and what not to do, followed by discussion. I would prefer discussion rather than one-way talk. As far as International Journal of Consumer Studies is concerned, we would prefer papers with generalized outlook, papers that you have focused on theory, that you have some innovative ideas, and that is original and that is unique, novel. And I also work as an associate editor with a couple of other journals like European Management Journal, Journal of Strategic Marketing. I was an associate editor with Journal of Business Services Industries Journal, International Journal of Emerging Markets before, but when I took over as chief editor of IGCS, I don't have any more free time, so I quit from some journals. Okay, so now let me give you some ideas straight away. In almost all journals, editors or reviewers look for generalized approach, which means if your model A works in setting A or context A, it should work in setting B or context B. Generalized approach also refers that you focus more about your topic in the introduction rather than talking about your country context in the introduction. Because journals are interested in your article being downloaded by people from different countries. And my suggestion to you is that provide your readers a roadmap of how paper is going to flow. This is another suggestion. This is not related to the point 1. So point 2 is that organization dimension. Point 1, I talk about generalized approach, theoretical approach. That is because journals need papers that get downloads. Point 2 is that a roadmap of how paper is going to flow. So here, the point is, yeah, sometimes people don't have an organizing section, and organizing section helps, especially when a journal is following an APA format and such kind of things. And number 3, highlight the originality of your study in abstract and introduction. What is original in your study? What is original is very important. Journals can check originality based on similarity report, but originality, the less the similarity percentage, the more you have a chances of acceptance. And in case if your similarity exceeds more than 25%, your paper will get rejected. So last week, I handled a paper from France, Schema Business School, and it was 47% plagiarized. I've had occasions of plagiarized submissions from many countries, including Australia, many reputed institutions, including IIT or IIM in India, or some of the prestigious schools in the world. Some of them, they don't take care of plagiarism. They just submit papers with plagiarized content. So this is affecting their reputation, but they do it. So just take care of this aspect. And uniqueness of your study, this is also very important. You yourself will have to ask, when you decide a topic or when you decide to submit a paper, you have to ask what is unique in your paper. This is very important. What is unique? There is something unique, you have a better chance. And relating to my previous point, approximately 20% submissions I receive as an editor in different journals are plagiarized. This is a sad reality. And my next point is, to increase the chances of acceptance, I would suggest that you cite recent papers from different journals, preferably from your target journal, because your paper references and citations in your paper should look updated and it should not look outdated. So in order to have a better look, you need recent references and identify the gap for research, gap for your study based on recent references. You have to establish that others haven't done your type of study, citing recent papers. On the other hand, if all your citations are outdated, all your citations come from 1990s and 2000, 2007, 2008, 2010, 2015, that's not enough. So as an editor, or many editors look at, or many reviewers look at your references are recent or not. So this is very important. And these days, robustness checks are also required. If you have a time series data, do robustness checks like multicollinearity, and if you have cross-section survey-based research, common method, bias, such kind of robustness checks also will help if you have an empirical paper. And going on to the next point, English editing and proofreading. This is very important. I had some good paper submission from Turkey and India. I handled as an editor. But when I looked at the paper idea is good, great, but English quality is very bad. We cannot consider such papers. We have to reject such papers. So my suggestion is that hire someone to do the English editing. If you are not a native speaker, before you submit a paper, it's very important. There are many freelance editors. So hire someone, okay? And otherwise, if you have a colleague who can do it, ask him to do it. Either give him a co-authorship or give her a co-authorship, otherwise pay him. This is very important. Yeah, move on to next point. If you have an empirical paper, derive hypotheses. If you have a qualitative paper, derive research questions. If you have a conceptual paper, derive theoretical or testable propositions. This also helps you. And discussion section, I'm moving on to discussion section in your paper. Even in literature review section in your paper, you can include a table with the findings of prior studies in your area or on your topics. So what others have found in your area, and that can be simply included in literature review section as a table. And if you are not including that kind of table in your literature review section, what you can do is that you can include that table in your discussion section and try to corroborate or contrast your findings with findings of prior studies and include that table in the discussion section. This also will help you. Select a topic with newness and novelty and avoid recycled topics. This is also important. And implement all comments if you get revision. Papers normally go through 1 or 2 or 3 rounds of revision before getting accepted. So if you get comments from reviewers, editors, try to implement all comments. This is important. If you implement only part of the comments, you will have fight and problem with the reviewers. Reviewers have their own. They think that they know more than you, so they will reject your paper. Try to implement maximum comments. Defense is not a good idea. Okay. And focus on conceptual, analytical, and presentation dimension. So this is another point. For every paper, there has to be a contribution: conceptual contribution, analytical contribution, and presentation. Analytical contribution: what can be analyzed and what is what is the analysis that you have applied. It need to look. Intellectual rigor is also being measured, being assessed. Conceptual: what is the conceptual contribution? What is unique in your paper? For example, I developed a concept called 7P framework for international marketing. I developed another concept called mass-teach theory and mass-teach model for brand management. I developed a CPP model for internationalization of companies. I developed SCORE framework for small companies to survive and succeed. These are my 4 unique contributions in academia. So likewise, you have to think about what is the conceptual contribution. 7P framework for 7P framework that I developed with Eric Maas from Indiana University in America. So that conceptual framework is based on an equation. Performance is a function of potential, path, process, pace, pattern, and problems. And what we call for is that we call for each and every organization to carry out a business plan or feasibility analysis based on this equation so that they can perform better. So every organization needs to look at potential for their business, future potential for their business. And they have to look at what processes they will follow. What is the speed at which they will do business in terms of pace? Pace is nothing but speed. And what pattern they will do the business, what will be their patterns, and what are the problems they have to anticipate. There are expected problems and unexpected problems. And organizations, those who do such kind of business plan preparation, they have better chances of performing or better chances of survival and success. So that is what is my unique contribution in the name of 7P framework. Performance is a function of other 6 Ps. And we publish an article based on that 7P framework for international marketing, which can also be used in the context of COVID-19 pandemic these days. So it was published in 2020. So likewise, what is your conceptual contribution? I published another paper on mass-teach model for management, brand management and marketing. So I have 2 papers in that area. One is titled Towards Mass-teach Theory for Marketing, and another one is mass-teach model for brand management. And this model and this theory is based on mass-teach stands for mass prestige or brand's prestige. So this theory is based on premium price is a function of mass prestige, and mass prestige is a function of product promotion and place strategies. As a result, indirectly, premium price is a function of your product promotion and place strategies. So that is what is mass-teach theory is all about. How do you create prestige for your brand? Today, your brand may be an unknown brand, and how do you transform your brand as a prestigious brand? That is what is mass-teach theory or mass-teach marketing is talking about. Likewise, can you contribute something? Can you come with something unique, something novel, something new that can be considered as your contribution that can win prizes like Nobel Prize 25 years or 20 years down the line or 15 years down the line because academia moves slowly? So this is what is conceptual contribution is all about. All right. And presentation dimension is when you have a paper, each and every section, each and every paragraph should flow properly from one paragraph to other paragraph. That flow is important, and that flow will take you, your paper get accepted because of the flow. But if your flow is missing, then your paper is likely to be rejected, because journals accept only 5% or 6% or 7% or 8% submissions. For example, our journal get 2,000 submissions, and we accepted about 130 submissions last year, but the year before we accepted only about 65 submissions. The year before we had only something about 1,300 submissions, and but last year we had 2,000 submissions. And some don'ts. Don't cite from regional, local, national journals if you are submitting to international journals. Avoid citations from websites if possible. Maximum 1 or 2 citations from websites is fine, not more than 1 or 2 citations from websites. And you need a generalized paper as a goal to have a generalized paper. Avoid your country name or state name in your title, because you need a generalized title. And no need to spend all your time to change format if journal A rejects your paper to submit to journal B, because 80% of the journal editors do not care format these days. Most of them have implemented free format policy. And do not submit to low-moving, slow-paced journals. Like there is a company called company name starting with Inder. I don't want to say the last name of the company, and they have 5,000 journals. As a result, but for only 50 staff members. As a result, they take 1 year to publish a paper after they accept. So don't submit to journals managed by such companies, because it will take 1 year to publish online after your paper gets accepted. Okay, that's not a good idea. The fast, the companies, those who process your papers within 1 week or 10 days after acceptance, to publish a paper, they are Elsevier, Wiley, Springer, Taylor and Francis, Sage, and kind of companies. Emerald still takes about 1 to 2 months, and the other company I was taking about 1 year time. So think about journals managed by professional publishers, those who have resources to publish your paper within 10 days after a paper gets accepted. The speed of processing a paper after submission to the date of acceptance, it varies from editor to editor. So even you can look at the speed of each and every journal on Elsevier website and Wiley website. They provide information about which journals are fastest in terms of submission to the date of acceptance. Journal Finder on Elsevier website and Wiley website. And I repeat, don't defend yourself if you get a revision, because it is very difficult to get a revision. Yeah, so this is what I have to talk about. And then I would like to thank you very much for inviting me. And my email is profjust@gmail.com. And if you want to watch such kind of videos of my lectures, they are all available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/drjustinpaul. And Dr. Justin Paul is my logo. It's everywhere, youtube.com/Dr. Justin Paul, and my website is also drjustinpaul.com. And so Dr. Justin Paul, my Facebook page is also facebook.com/Dr. Justin Paul. So if you remember Dr. Justin Paul, you can remember me, and you can remember my work, and you can remember my YouTube channel. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Justin Paul. So here there is Dr. Raghavendra Kumar is there. He has one question with you. Raghavendra Kumar, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. How does the research methodology is having an impact on selecting the article for the publication?
Research methodology is important in terms of everything is important in a paper. So you need to have a robust methodology, so whatever you do, so it can be quantitative or qualitative or whatever, but you can use any type of methodology, but whatever you do should be should be, like as I said, if you have a survey-based research, you need to have common method bias test. If you have an experimental result, for example, these days experimental studies have better chances of acceptance because it's relatively new experimental studies. So in marketing, but it depends on the subject area. You know, in finance, people don't do experimental studies, but you need to have a robust research methodology in any subject.
And what are all the best way to avoid the plagiarism or reduce the plagiarism? Is there paraphrasing or rephrasing will help to reduce the plagiarism?
Yeah, so I would say that you have to write your paper and then rewrite your paper 3-4 times and check similarity reports. And if similarity is found to be high, rewrite again or hire somebody to rewrite. And that is another way. You can hire someone to improve English language so that plagiarism will be less also.
Yes. Thank you very much for your input, sir. I would like to apply for the same thing for the journals.
Thank you.
To write the paper.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. I think we have come to an end of the session. So over to Ms. Majan.
Thank you, Professor Justin Paul, for your very informative session on the do's and don'ts on publishing and quality management journals. I would like to welcome Dr. Anand, Director of Postgraduate Studies and Research at the College of Banking and Financial Studies, as he will be delivering the concluding remarks of this webinar.
So thank you, Ms. Majan. So at the outset, we have achieved a great success in today's program. Thanks to 3 great scholarly professors, Professor Justin Paul, Professor Hiram Ting, and Professor Preeti Rawat. We are highly grateful for your scholarly presentation and sharing your knowledge to the community. Actually, this is our program. What we are organizing today is part of our community engagement program. The objective is to enhance the impactful research across the globe. So that is why we requested 3 eminent editors-in-chief of various journals, and they have graciously agreed, and they have made a wonderful presentation, and they have clarified even many doubts of our audience. And on behalf of the College of Banking and Financial Studies, I thank all 3 great professors who have actively participated in sharing their knowledge to the community in today's webinar. Thank you so much, Professor Paul and Professor Hiram and Professor Preeti. And we also thank the participants. We have a good number of participation for this webinar, almost from the 28 different countries. And our objective is to share the knowledge to the community so that we have done our work to the extent of maximum possible. So we thank you for showing confidence and interest for our programs. And we look forward to your active participation even in our future events also. I also thank our college dean as well as management for giving our department to an opportunity to conduct this webinar. And this webinar is recorded, and we will be uploading in CBFS YouTube channel, and we will share these recordings to all the participants, and we will also share others also. So our knowledge is not restricted. Whatever the knowledge we have collected today will not be restricted. We will be sharing it again back to the community. You can use our YouTube channel recordings again as a future reference. And we will also focus more into research. We are coming out with various research activities like edited books. We come out with every year one edited book, which will be published by leading publishers like Emerald, or our last edited book was published by Pearson Springer Nature. So we will also share, since you are there in our database, we will share all the information in the future. You can also contribute to our edited books. And we do conduct international conference, seminars, faculty development programs, panel discussions, etc. We will share the information to you. and please join us and support all our research events and activities in the future. So this is just a beginning of our relationship. We look forward to have a continuous relationship with you all. So with this brief talk, I conclude my concluding remarks, and I thank one and all for making this event a grand success. Thank you. Over to Ms. Majan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. So finally, we have come to the end of this webinar. In future, as Dr. Anand mentioned, we aim to conduct similar events to provide a platform for novice researcher and all researcher to gain knowledge of research and publications. Thank you very much. Have a good day or a good evening, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will signing it off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.